There's this notion, Drake Maye, got hit a lot on Saturday, and, now they're saying he has a hand injury. And I've been hearing debate about whether or not they should play him, which is so befuddling to me that I can't even see the side to think that you wouldn't. You have an entire offseason, and the whole thing about playing him in the first place is to get him the reps. So you've played him in front of this, behind this offensive line the entire year. He's had these lack of weapons the entire year. If there was any game I was going to play him in, it would be this game. He has the entire offseason. Unless he tears his Achilles, I mean, if he gets a concussion, fine. Then you take him out of the game, and he has all the offseason to heal the concussion. If his hand's bothering him and he can play in the game, play him. Play him. If his hand's bothering him, it's not going to get any worse. He's got the whole offseason to get over it. And if you have this issue with your coach and how this team's getting blown out and you want them to be competitive, then how do you want the coach to turn to all the players and go, oh, we're not playing the quarterback because he's got a hand injury he could play through, or we're resting him, or we want the number 1 overall draft pick, which, by the way, everyone thinks that number 1 overall draft pick is going to be worth a lot. I got news for you. It's not going to be worth anything because the Vikings control everything with J.J. McCarthy because they have no choice but to re-sign Sam Darnold, which means they got to trade McCarthy, and they're going to get way more for McCarthy than you would with the number 1 pick.
Okay. So and that's the only reason not to play Drake Maye is because if Jacoby Brissett is your starting quarterback on Sunday against the Bills' third string, the Patriots win that game. Do you have any expectation that the Patriots could beat the Bills with Jacoby Brissett on Sunday?
Despite what happened 2 weeks ago, no.
But the thing is this: you have to fire Mayo. Then, you can't fire Mayo.
Okay,
if you don't play your starters and you lose on Sunday, then you're going to turn around and fire him. You can't do that. There can't be an edict that we don't want to lose the number 1 pick. But by the way, we're going to fire the coach based on performance, but we're not going to play the starters. That's asinine.
If they end up winning on Sunday, their draft position could fall as low as 4. Okay.
And then you have if you're 4th, then big deal. Then you just take the best player at a premier position. That's better than the quarterbacks anyway.
But then you miss out on Travis Hunter. You miss out on the opportunity to trade down and gather more draft picks.
You can trade down.
I'm aware of that, but I think that this haul that everyone thinks is going to go for the number 1 pick is not happening.
I'm not even worried about getting 2 or 3 first-round picks. I just want extra picks. I want the ability to trade down to get extra picks to get more people in here.
Obviously, you want to lose on Sunday, but you can't set out to lose on Sunday. Especially, you can't have it both ways, that people want to fire the coach because of the lack of... First of all, the idea that people are shocked that the Patriots suck is really fascinating to me.
That's crazy.
Vegas had him at 4.5 wins. They won.
This isn't second guessing. This is first guessing. We knew the conversation around after they beat Cincinnati on opening day wasn't okay. They might actually be something. From my point of view, it was thank God they won this game, so we won't be 0-5 or 0-6.
Right, exactly. They weren't gonna. Cincinnati was gonna have the opposite kind of season as New England is. Cincinnati now is mathematically still got a shot at the playoffs because they got hot at the end. You wanted the team playing better at the end of the season. They're not. If Vrabel wants the job, we're jamming a lot in here, but if Vrabel wants the job, maybe you consider giving it to him. But you can't not play players in order to – and obviously you'd prefer to have the number 1 overall pick. But you can't not play players and then fire the coach. And then you cannot not play players and keep the coach and say develop a culture. But, by the way, we're going to literally tank the last game. Obviously, the Giants won, and they need the first pick way more than you do. And the Giants won, and they're probably not even firing Dayball. And the win was more valuable to them than the draft pick.
Ultimately, I didn't want the team to tank to get the first pick in the draft, but here we are. We're here. They have 1 game left. I don't want the Patriots to win this game on Sunday.
Of course you don't, but if you're the Patriots, you can't sit starters deliberately to lose.
I don't care about starters. I just care about Maye. And I don't want what is beating a bunch of backups from Buffalo do for his evolution?
It gives him reps, and it sets a culture for this team that you can't rest a healthy quarterback when there's no more games to play. The only time you can do it is when there's nothing to play for. Jesus Christ, the Lions had nothing to play for in a lot going on this season, and they played everyone against San Francisco. And if you love Dan Campbell and everyone loves the Lions culture, and this is the greatest culture, then do what the Lions did, because it was a meaningless game last Monday night. It was a meaningless game because everything is this Sunday night against the Vikings. They're playing for wild card or number one seed. That's set. And the Lions played their starters because of a culture. You can't not play Maye. There's no excuse for it. You just be literally tanking. And I can't think of a time a team in football's done that. I know the Jets had a chance at the number one pick with Trevor Lawrence, and maybe it's not the worst thing in the world they didn't get him. And they won on the last game of the season.
And they wound up with what's his name? The kid with the guy with the pretty mom. What's his name?
Oh, Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson.
Yeah, they ended up with Zach Wilson. But I mean, listen, they didn't have to give him a second contract, so I don't know if. Yeah. I don't know if Jacksonville's in a better place. But so just off the top of my head, I can't think of teams actively tanking for the first pick, like in terms of not playing guys, like a quarterback who needs reps, who the whole reason you're playing for is these reps.
Yeah, I don't know that he needs one more game worth of reps in this season. And look, I think for the overall good of the team and for Maye, it's probably better that he plays because Mayo is going to be back, and there are going to be guys back on this team. But
you can't fire him if you don't play Maye.
There's going to be enough change over to where if he does sit out, I think they'll be all right. And to your point about the Lions playing everybody in a game that didn't matter if they won or lost, that's because they still are going to be playing well into the postseason. The culture for this year matters.
No. The culture was set when they sucked. That's what we've been saying this whole time. That's been the knock against Mayo, is that when Campbell took over and they were bad record, he was setting that culture. He played those players. They had far more to lose. If St. Brown gets hurt, if Goff gets hurt in that game, then the amount of crap that's going to come down on him that they got hurt in a meaningless game, he played those guys because this is the culture. And if everyone's enamored, as they should be, with that Lions culture and how that whole franchise got turned around and how he did all this, and that's the litmus of how to do things, it's asinine that you would not actively play a player in a game where it's the last game of the season and you're not resting them for anything. The only thing if there's like an old wily lineman who wants another run at it, like somewhere. Yeah, all right. Like, give the guy, thanks a lot for your service. Like, just keep healthy. I guess, go off and, try to play for a contender next year. But in terms of your franchise quarterback kid, get out of here. You're not going to play him, actively tank for the first pick. That's ridiculous. And if someone can call in with an example of it happening in the past, I'd love to hear it. I'm not saying it hasn't. I'm just saying the Giants this year didn't actively tank. They tried to win, and they won. The Jets that year didn't actively tank for Trevor Lawrence. I'm just trying to think of an example of a team deliberately not playing guys in football. I've seen it in other sports, but football,
usually the team is bad enough to lose on its own.
Right.
Like this team, by the way.
But if we're not playing our starting quarterback, why? Because we got the number one pick. We don't want to win. I don't recall that ever happening. By the way, a lot of you and NFL people said, no, don't take Drake Maye. You have to build the team first and then take the quarterback.
Take Marvin Harrison. Take Marvin Harrison Jr. Yep.
Yeah,
a bunch of people said that.
Or take Michael Penix, or Michael Penix. Didn't you see Michael Penix? Michael Penix was in.
Zoe is a huge Penix guy leading up to the draft. I remember that.
A lot of people on the station were take Michael Penix. Don't you see Michael Penix? Michael Penix, because you saw Michael Penix play in that game, in the one game that he played well. You saw that, and then that's why. And you and I won that because you didn't watch North Carolina, and so for everyone's wisdom around here about the draft and positioning for the future, I'll take it all with a grain of salt. this whole notion.
They did right by picking Jaden Daniels. Would have been fine. You saw him in the last game,
but
he
you
was
couldn't have picked
fantastic.
him, so it's moot. So like
You could have moved up.
Yeah. Well, they weren't going to trade out of the 2 spot. They needed a quarterback.
Look, they deserve credit for taking Maye.
Yes,
they did.
and my point is you hit on the draft. My point is people are wrong. And this whole notion that they have the number 1 pick in the draft and that you're taking from it.
The people are wrong for thinking they should have taken Marvin Harrison Jr.
They're wrong for everything.
But I push back on giving them too much credit for taking the 3rd quarterback available at 3.
All I'll say is that there were plenty of people.
What?
There were plenty of people calling in and on this station and writing that thought that they shouldn't take a quarterback at that pick, that they should trade down, and that you should build the team. Liv Schatz didn't want to take Maye. Liv Schatz, and I think Jim Murray too. Not Jim Murray. Joe Murray was maybe not Joe, but there were a lot of people that were like, "Look at the Kansas City Chiefs. You got to do what the Kansas City Chiefs do." Would you rather not have Drake Maye? Anyway, we're getting off the case. I made the point. I don't recall a team actively tanking the last game, like not playing their starting quarterback who's good in order to keep the number 1 overall pick. We got this call, and I did a little research because I had the break to do it. Nate, go ahead.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey, what's up, Nate?
Nothing much. So let's see if you did your research. So what happened back in 2011 is when Peyton Manning actually hurt his neck and he sat out the whole year, okay, with the Indianapolis Colts. So instead of saying, hey, look, we can actually have a season, they could have went out and got Carson Palmer, but they stuck with Curtis Painter.
Right, okay. You're right. No. They actively tried not to win that season. I'm talking about the last game of the season. Benching.
What's the point if you're sitting at the top? Think about it. If you're sitting at the top, what are you actually doing? Okay, if you haven't seen anything this far with 15 games, 16 games, seen a swing, that last game is not really going to show you anything.
But then it's the same thing about not playing the best quarterback during the season. How are you going to tell the other guys on the team, oh, by the way, you got to play in this meaningless game, but we're not going to play Drake Maye? All right, can you fire Mayo if you don't play Maye? Can you fire Mayo if you don't play Maye in the last game?
Yeah, you can't. He hasn't shown anything.
Okay, well then you can't take away his starting quarterback in the last game and go, we haven't seen anything from you.
See, I think Robert Kraft is going to keep Mayo, so that your theory's out the window. I don't think they're going to fire him.
Well, you can't fire him if you don't play him, and also you're undercutting him. Because if your whole problem with Mayo has been how this season they haven't been developing and they haven't been showing anything at the end of the season, and then you go, oh, by the way, you can't play your best player on Sunday. None of this makes logical sense, but Ryan did find something. Ryan, I need Ryan on the microphone.
Yeah, basically I remember in 2021, Doug Peterson with the Eagles, he benched Hurts in the 4th quarter. It was a 1-score game. He brought in Nate Sudfeld. And the division was still on the line, and I think he was basically like actively tanking to improve their draft stock. Basically, the story is he lost the locker room because of it, and shortly got fired thereafter.
Yeah. So Ryan, to his credit, found an example of actively tanking the last game, and it lost the locker room and got the coach fired. So in the one example we could find, the Colts arguably tanked the season. So if you're going to just tank a season,
they didn't argue with. They tanked the season because Andrew Luck was sitting there.
That was the suck for luck season.
But I can't recall a team the last game of the season going, whoops-a-daisy, we're not playing our young quarterback because we want to lose. And that can't be good for anyone. You're not overturning 52 people on this roster. If all this BS about Maye having to play because he was the best quarterback and you lose the locker room and you got to develop a culture, if any of that's true, you certainly can't bench the kid in order to actively tank for the first pick of the draft.
We're going to have Phil Perry in here next hour, and I remember having this similar sort of discussion with him at the beginning of the season on whether or not to play Drake Maye in general. And he was saying, well, if you don't play your best player, what is that saying to the rest of your locker room? We were talking about this in week 2 or 3, and then they played Maye. And
your organization is a total joke. The whole fire about Mayo this year has been that he's not ready to coach. Look at how they're performing. They haven't gotten better as the season goes. And then you go, oh, by the way, we want the number 1 pick so we can trade out of it. We're going to actively try to lose this game against backups. But to pay attention to organizations, sign here as free agents. You know, like in either we're firing the coach that we didn't let play his best player, or we're keeping a coach who's supposed to build the culture. Either way, you can't. I just don't understand it. And I've also heard the notion of what if May gets hurt? Okay, if May gets hurt, he gets hurt. If May gets hurt, if he got hurt last week, he got hurt last week. If he gets hurt this week, he gets hurt this week. What the hell difference does it make?
I get what you're
saying. This is the game you want him to get hurt in.
If you miss out on Travis Hunter because you go all out and beat Buffalo's backups, if you miss out on a chance to trade down to accumulate draft picks, I mean, if you're sitting at number 1, the Giants and Raiders will trade up to number 1 to get whatever quarterback they want. You still get Travis Hunter and a bunch of draft picks.
Well, I'll tell you this. John, you're stating the obvious. It's like saying there's $1 million in cocaine sitting on the road. If I pick it up, I'll have more money when it's over than it is. But there are ramifications to what we're saying. You're making the argument that they'd want the number 1 overall pick. Of course they would. And by the way, just as a side note, the notion that the Giants and the Raiders are definitely going to trade with you for that number 1 pick is false narrative, because there's a better quarterback that is out there and available right now, and that is J.J. McCarthy, who teams would much rather have than Shedeur Sanders or the kid from Miami who pulled himself out of the game.
Cam Ward.
And from everything I've heard, J.J. McCarthy would be far and away the number 1 overall pick in this draft. And if he's going to be available,
that's true. I read none of the quarterbacks in this draft would touch the 6th last year.
So I'm dealing with the Vikings, and I'm making my deal with the Vikings. And you can take Shedeur Sanders in Cam Ewers. You could take them and go screw.
That would be funny if they did, for whatever reason, ended up with the number 1 pick. You know, whether they worked it that way or not. And then nobody wanted it.
It's happened.
Then you get Travis Hunter.
It's, by the way,
not bad.
It's happened. There's been plenty of drafts where a quarterback didn't go number 1.
Great, but then people.
And by the way, you're coronating Travis Hunter as like the only guy in this draft that could be any good outside in the top 10. I think that he's considered by the guys early in the scouting process that write about it as the best player in the draft. But I don't think Travis Hunter is this guaranteed like he's going to end up having the best NFL career. There's no bellwether guy in this draft, I don't think at all.
We had Dane Brugler on, and he seemed to indicate when we had him on Travis Hunter was the best player in the draft.
Jesus, John. Yes, he's the best player in the draft, but he wouldn't have. He's not necessarily a franchise player, and he might have not been a top 10 pick in last year's draft. Like Travis Hunter's a great college player. He's not an elite prospect.
No, I've been less concerned with getting Travis Hunter as I am just acquiring and stocking up on draft picks. Just give me more, give me more. Andrew Callahan was on a couple of days ago, and he made this point. I totally agree with him. It's a numbers game. You're going to hit on a certain percentage, so the more picks you have, the greater your odds of hitting. And it doesn't have to be Travis Hunter. It could be a third-round receiver. It could be any number of players in any round.
Right. I'm not an idiot. I understand the value of having the first pick and trading down and accumulating more picks.
You might be an idiot if you mentioned Drake Maye getting reps again in Week 18. I don't care about him getting reps.
It's you want him. If the whole thing is you want young quarterbacks with as much NFL experience, and the only way to get that is to be in games. This game's as viable as any other game.
Nah,
it is.
Like,
it
it's
is
bad.
the logic
Who
of
cares?
it.
It's not. The Bills don't care about
Bills
winning.
don't care.
Well,
Half the Patriots don't care.
How does
Come
that
on.
make it an equally viable NFL game if the opponent doesn't care?
Well, they're going to play.
Yeah, they're going to play. They're going to play a bunch of crap players because it literally doesn't matter if they win or lose.
Who would you take, the roster that the Bills put out on Sunday or the Patriots roster?
Even with the Bills' backups, it's a coin flip.
And by the way, it's not 24 backups. They can't do that. It's in the guy. And I'll tell you this: I'd rather play the starters in a game like that. Play against starters because the starters might be going half-ass. Those backups playing for jobs.
You saw it a couple of weeks ago. The Bills did not show up in the first half of that
exactly.
game.
So, look, I'm happy that the quarterback's not playing, but I'm not. Josh Allen's not playing, but other than that, you get one of these hard-ons, trying to get some tape. I don't know about that. Ben, go ahead.
Hey, Fred, you're spot on. There's another example where the team who was trying to create culture purposely won the last games. That was the Texans in 2023. They won the last game of the year, caused themselves to get out of the number one pick, which that pick ended up going to Carolina. Carolina got Bryce Young. Houston ended up with Stroud. So even if you don't have the number one pick, because you're trying to build culture, you're trying to win football games, you still might end up with the right guy. I mean, granted, Bryce Young's been playing better, but I think we can all agree that
Stroud's the better
player.
quarterback. And Ben, how about this? You tank for the number one pick, you get the number one pick, and Shedeur Sanders says, I won't play. I'm not going to play for the Giants. And he goes, I'm not going to play for the Giants. I won't play. And by the way, newsflash, Deion Sanders has said he will be very involved in Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter where they go. He will tell a team that he won't go to him. So now you have J.J. McCarthy, who's the better quarterback, up for a trade, because I don't think there's any way that the Vikings can't keep Darnold after this season. I don't know how you sell your team that. So J.J. McCarthy, he's available for trade, young quarterback. Maybe younger than Cam Ward. He might be younger than Cam Ward. And Shedeur Sanders says, I'm not going to go to your team. Now there's only one team that could possibly want the number one overall pick, and they know you're not going to take the quarterback.
It's so weird.
And so you're sitting there.
J.J. McCarthy was the better quarterback during the preseason, too. He had the starter's job won.
There is a chance.
And now he's gone?
There's a chance that you could get the number one pick, and the team with the third pick knows that they have their choice of quarterback because you're not taking him, and the second team he won't go to. So if, like, say Vegas is just a hypothetical, Vegas is sitting at 3, they could go, all right, well, we could trade for J.J. McCarthy, or we can just sit at 3 because you're not taking a quarterback, and Shedeur Sanders isn't going to the Giants, hypothetically. There's a lot of highfalutin rolling around in this draft.
Trade McCarthy after all this. I understand.
You know what?
Darnold's
They may
had a
not
great
trade
year.
McCarthy if Darnold goes out and throws 6 picks on Sunday. Who are they playing on Sunday?
Well, the team with
Detroit.
the best defense in the NFL.
There you go. The best defense in the
best
NFL.
defense in the NFL.
That's right. I'm sure that's exactly what's going to happen.
But what's funny for me is everyone around here, the team's always good, so they're wheeling and dealing now. We got Maye in last year's draft. We're going to trade down. Everyone loves QBs. We'll just get whatever we want. We'll see what you get for that number one pick. We'll see just how much people want Cam Ward. Well, I'm interested in how much people want Cam Ward, how much they value Cam Ward more than the third kid in the draft. Like, how all of a sudden Cam Ward is this otherworldly talent that they're so willing to mortgage all their draft capital in the future just to go up and get. And I'm also interested where Shedeur Sanders will agree to play. And I'm also interested where J.J. McCarthy would go. So nothing would be funnier to me than benching Drake Maye on Sunday to tank, getting the number one pick, and sticking with it, and taking Travis Hunter, and then him being just an okay receiver. And for all this wheeling and dealing you're going to do, where no one wants to pick, be very careful. This isn't the Andrew Luck draft. This isn't the Trevor Lawrence draft. This isn't last year's draft. There's no sure shot number one kid. You better be careful, because even if there was some like kick-ass pass rusher or left tackle that you could go like, all right, look, Myles
Apparently
Garrett,
the kid from Penn State's
all
a
right,
kick-ass
very
pass
good.
rusher.
He's not Myles Garrett. If there was like Myles Garrett in this draft, remember Myles Garrett? Everyone's like, this kid's a phenomenon, once in a generation lineman. If there's that, you go, okay, well, I've got my Bruce Smith of the future. But you screw around with this, it's going to be very funny to me. Very funny on draft day where you're like, duh, we gotta take Travis Hunter with the first pick. And everyone's so excited. And you didn't pay Drake Maye. You kept Mayo. The locker room hates him because he thinks he turned his back on him. The organization is a joke, and you got Travis Hunter and Drake Maye and nothing else. And you go into free agency and they go, screw you. I'm not playing for you. Your organization's a clown show.
No, the free agents don't care. They don't. They're not concerned with what happened at the one game at the end of the previous
They're
season.
concerned about how your organization is viewed from the outside, and I'll give you the example of your whiffing in free agency last year. You tried very hard to add a receiver, and none of them would come, and it wasn't money. Ayuk sat around waiting. Ayuk sat around until the last minute.
Well, maybe we'll get a new GM, too. I know you're opposed to that, but I'm not.
I don't care if you get a new GM.
You're the one who said you couldn't fire him after a year.
I don't think you can fire a GM after 1 year and not look like an out-of-control organization. But if that's the way you want to do business, fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go. Look, we gave you a draft in an offseason. we invested all this into you. We gave you the keys. And look, you had your draft. Sure, you got the quarterback, but I don't like who you took in the second round.
Got the quarterback. Here we go. Again.
I know there's just that minor detail.
The team needed a quarterback. He was the third best quarterback. There were three. There were
Johnny
two
in Southborough didn't want him to take the quarterback.
Yeah, they wanted Marvin
Alex
Harrison
Barth
Jr.
wanted him to take Penix. Trade down and get Penix. Felger wanted him to trade down and
Elliott
get
Wolf
Penix.
is smarter than Johnny in Southborough, so he gets to keep his job for 5 more years.
I'm just saying it wasn't. Is a collective fan base in media taking Drake May, as John will attest, was not a universal take.
No, far from it.
Far from it.
Far from it. And give Wolf credit for not trading the pick and getting the quarterback. He could have just as easily traded it and not taken Drake May.
All right, we'll get Dave Richards' thought.
No,
Put that in your pipe and smoke
Dave
it.
Richard watches all the football games. We're talking to him. It's not even about fantasy anymore because I lost it.
If you like that clip, and how could you not? Check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for the latest from the Sports Hub, download at 985thesportshub.com.